Scott Allen Curley, welcome to Nightside. You're an expert on mindset, and resilience, but you're also a former prison inmate, now a self-made millionaire, and one of the nation's most unlikely and successful entrepreneurs. Sounds like you got quite a story.
Well, first, let me thank you for having me, Dan. It's such a pleasure, and it's definitely been a roller coaster ride, but one that I'm still on.
Okay, well, yeah, we all have roller coasters. We have ups and downs in our lives, and anyone who is able to get themselves squared away is a real asset in my book. You wrote a book called Absolution, The Dark Path to Light, and that does kind of say it all. If I could just ask you, how long were you inside the wall?
Well, my trouble started. I know we don't have very long, so I'll give you the elevator pitch on that.
Sure.
But
okay.
My legal trouble started right after high school, pretty much. Okay. I lived growing up was pretty tough, and I started spiraling right afterwards. And to answer your question, after it was all said and done, I spent about 10 years in prison.
Well, I'm glad you're out. You sound like a pretty sharp guy, and I think, sometimes people don't realize how good they can have it until maybe they've experienced some tough times, and it sounds to me like you've survived and now you're prospering. So the subject we're going to talk about is how many bad days do Americans have per month? When you're in prison, there's not too many good days, so you got a little bit of expertise on this, my friend. How did you come to this issue, determining a survey, how many bad days do Americans have per month?
Well, my folks reached out to you regarding that, and it's probably not fair for us to have this conversation, and I say that tongue-in-cheek because after you spent 10 years in prison,
yeah,
and have gone through the things that I've gone through, then it's very difficult for me to have a bad day.
I hear you. I think we're on the same page. I kind of said the same thing in a different way. So
yeah.
But you've got a perspective on this. What's the source of this information? Apparently, there's some sort of a survey that took place. How did they do that?
Well, I do have my PR folks told me about the survey, and I believe they filled it out on my behalf, if I'm understanding it correctly. But yeah, my perspective on bad days are relative. We're, as humans, we all have some days that are better than others. There's a saying that goes, I once was sad because I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet.
Right.
So that may be cliche, but I really, in my heart and soul, live by that. It could always be so much worse. And so I try to live my life by just having what's called an attitude of gratitude. Mm-hmm. I say this to myself and remind myself of this also, which is my worst day out here on free ground is always better than my best day in prison.
Well, it's interesting. I looked at this survey real quickly here, and I don't want to dive too deeply into it because, frankly, I think you got a better and a more interesting story. They did a survey of 2,000 general people, Americans, okay? They concluded that the average American knows if it's going to be a bad day by 8:36 a.m. Now, I have no idea what that means.
Wow.
And look, we all have bad days. We all have great days. But I just think that for someone like yourself who was able to bounce back from this, I think the flip side of your story, and I don't know if you're familiar with the case of Aaron Hernandez, who was a football player with the Patriots.
I am very much so, and I think I know where you're going with this. But
the point, what I'm going is that you were born in some difficult circumstances, and you had a couple of mistakes. I don't need to go into them or whatever, but that happened, and you paid your price. Hernandez was blessed with talent, a specific type of gift, which allowed him to become a top player in the National Football League. But then he apparently allegedly turned into a cold-blooded murderer, and ended up in jail, threw it all away. I mean, if Aaron Hernandez hadn't made some really dumb and horrific mistakes, he'd probably be retired a couple of years and going around, and the worst thing he'd have to do for the rest of his life would be sign autographs and be paid money for it. So, I mean, it's sort of the mirror image of you. You went from horrific circumstances to a much better place. He went from enlightened and wonderful circumstances to a place where he finally couldn't tolerate it and allegedly killed himself in prison.
It was definitely a sad story, and it's one that we can all learn from. And in my opinion, it comes all down to whether or not we choose to be a victim, whether or not we're going to take the victim stance. We all have been victimized at one point in our lives. We cannot change that. We don't know what Aaron went through. But we choose whether or not we are going to be a victim. And I think that's the key in all of it. Some folks, unfortunately, just are kind of quick to, have pity parties and say, woe is me. And when things go badly, they kind of cover their head up. And we've all been guilty of that. But I encourage everyone that I speak with, because this is a pretty hot topic and talking point. I travel the country and speak a lot about these type of topics, especially one like this, and that it's all in the mindset. And I do believe, which may sound a little weird to you, I do believe that there are times when it's okay to give ourselves permission to feel sorry for ourselves. I do believe that every now and then, if you just have to feel sorry for yourself, and if you need to have that pity party, then go ahead and have one, but put a deadline on it. Put a start time on it and a stop time on it. And when your time has expired for that pity party to end, then it's time to get back out there and take care of business.
I couldn't agree with you more. I see that on your website you're the co-CEO of a group called the Finish Line Tax Solutions, an LLC.
Yeah.
This organization is committed to helping clients take control of their tax problems, and that obviously can be a big problem. You speak around the country. How can folks get your book? Because it sounds to me like this book, Absolution. Everybody at different times needs absolution, the dark path to light.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How can they get that, first of all, and then how can they be in contact if they'd like to have you come in and speak to a school group, church group, or whatever type of groups you speak, or corporate groups?
Well, sure. The book can be found on Amazon, BarnesandNobles.com, in some stores, pretty much anywhere books are sold. Yep. It's either going to be available in the store, or they'll be able to look it up and get it ordered, or you can just order it on Amazon.com. And I can be found on ScottAllenCurley.com. And I enjoy and love speaking, especially to young people, and I kind of have a passion for young entrepreneurs and prisoners, inmates, folks who kind of feel like they don't see a way out. And that's where my passion lies, because there's so much opportunity and potential out there, and so many people. Sometimes they just need a little help to find it within themselves. Real quickly, and I don't want to belabor this, but you need to realize what you are able to accomplish. I'd love to suggest a book to you. Okay, absolutely, please. Just for the fun of it, I think you'll be interested in it. It's called Basketball Junkie. It was written by a guy named Chris Herron, who was an NBA player, grew up here in New England, played for the Celtics, got drafted by the Denver Rockets, and developed a bad drug habit. Okay, basically, was a heroin addict, and washed out of the NBA. Went on to play basketball overseas. He played in 3 countries: China, Iran, and Turkey. And while he was in those 3 countries playing, professional basketball, but not making anywhere near the money that he would have made in the NBA, he had to score heroin every day in China. Oh wow! Iran, goodness! And Turkey. He's got his life squared away. I had him on my show several years ago. Later that year, he spoke to the incoming class of cadets at West Point. I think you'd love the book, and I think that you'd connect with him. Great guy. You remind me a lot of him, a guy that really turned his life around. For the I've already pulled it up. Chris Herron, author, and Basketball Junkie with Bill Reynolds, it looks like his co-author. And I'm going to be ordering it as soon as we get off air. All right, Scott, pleasure to meet you over the radio, and I hope that some folks
check you out at Scott Allen Curley, Allen Curley, Curley, and think about getting you around to some schools and places where you can tell kids the road that they should not take. Let's put it like that. I really appreciate your time tonight, Scott. I really do.
appreciate you having me. You have a great evening.